And we are live. It's your boy Sudden Death from the Purple Rain podcast. This is yet another episode of Quiet Storm Sports, a podcast, an audio podcast where me and your host Sudden Death will talk about kind of various sports topics. Eventually, I want to branch out and start talking about pretty much anything else. I don't want to keep it strictly to sports, but in the meantime, that is what we will be covering today. As you guys can see in the title, I want to talk about Cam Newton. I want to talk about Cam because recently Cam has been in the news for his criticisms on his podcast, the Fourth and One podcast. Shout out to Cam Newton for having that podcast. I think that, it's great that he has a platform, right? I like seeing past athletes or former athletes have a platform to talk about ball because I think that they have every right to talk about ball. They played it, but the question in the title is Cam Newton a clown? Because it seems like over the past couple of years, Cam Newton has gotten on his high horse and he has told the world, the masses, right, that there are not 32 quarterbacks in the league better than Cam Newton. And that's really where I have an issue. I'm going to preface it with that. Today, Cam Newton, well, actually, you know what? Let me rewind. Let me back up. A couple of days ago, Cam Newton on his podcast. What's going on, Dre? Appreciate that. A couple of days on his podcast, Cam Newton was basically saying that guys like, excuse me, Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, and there's some other guys that he mentioned too. He said that they're all game managers. Jared Goff, he was the other one. All game managers. And, he was saying those things, and then I think it was who was it? Kimberly Martin from ESPN had a bit where she was basically saying that, Cam Newton sounds like the incel men on the internet that tell me to stay in the kitchen when I'm talking about sports. Basically saying that Cam sounds bitter and he should really just stay in his lane. Fast forward to 48 hours later, Cam Newton claps back in a 10-minute clip, which I guess is clipped from a larger long-form podcast, which I should probably listen to as well. But this 10 minutes, he said a lot. He said a lot in this 10-minute clip that I watched earlier today, and a lot of it made sense. It really did. A lot of it made sense. And, he was talking about how, yes, I said that Goff, and by I mean Cam Newton, I said that Goff and Tua and Dak are game managers because they are. That's exactly what they are. He was arguing that those are the guys who will not necessarily win you a football game, but they definitely will not lose you a football game. Tua, maybe, I don't know. But I think what he's saying there is valid. There's a difference between quarterbacks like Brock Purdy and Jared Goff and Tua and Dak. Between them and guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, guys who are game changers. You see, in the NFL, you can win one of two ways. You can have a decent supporting cast and an amazing quarterback, or you can have an amazing supporting cast and a decent quarterback who's a game manager. I've seen success happen with both. I have. And Cam Newton went on to say that, teams are not, and this is where I think he was really spitting. He was really spitting when he said this. He said that teams are not looking to draft a Brock Purdy first round. They're not looking to draft Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott. They're not looking for those guys. They're looking for guys who have game-changing ability. Guys who don't need the rest of the team to produce. They are going to make it happen themselves one way or another. And you could just say just say you like dual threat quarterbacks. No, because I wouldn't necessarily classify a Patrick Mahomes as dual threat or a Joe Burrow as dual threat. Now, yes, those guys have a little bit of mobility to them, but I wouldn't consider them dual threat quarterbacks. They're just game changers in the sense that they are ballers. They're gamers. You know, they can put the team on their back. They're going to do whatever it takes to make the big play in the big moment. And that's what teams want to draft. You know, even when things are crumbling down around you as a quarterback and the team is wrong, you can still make shit right. That is what teams are looking to draft. So, like I said, what Cam Newton was saying is valid. That's valid. I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. What's good, Roosh? Appreciate you for coming through. Like this edition of Quiet Storm Sports. Appreciate that, bro. Appreciate that. Yeah. But yeah, like I was saying. But the part that I disagree with Cam, because like I said, he made a lot of good points. Oh yeah, he also made the point that, you know, these sports analysts, these TV talking heads, they're allowed, even without a background in sports. You know, they may just have a degree in journalism, communications, whatever. He was saying that, you know, why are they allowed to criticize athletes and they've never played before? But when I do it, and again, when I'm saying I mean Cam, when I do it, it's a problem. You know, that's what he was saying. That's the argument he was making. And he also made the argument that, like, hey, look, I've shown that I can do the journalist job and I can do the athlete job. So I'm qualified to be here on all facets, on all fronts, which is throwing shade at journalists because obviously most journalists did not play the game beforehand. You know, they came up, they were trained, they went to school to be journalists, which is also valid. And why, the exact reason why I started off this episode by saying, yeah, I love when athletes have their own platform. I love it because I feel like they deserve it. There's so many athletes who, after they get done playing ball, they don't know what the hell to do with themselves. They don't. So giving them a platform to kind of talk about their experiences and talk about the game that they played and review games that are happening in the present. That's amazing. That's awesome. And I love that for this generation of athletes. But here's where I have my problem with Cam Newton. I want you guys to listen up here. Like I said, I just got done agreeing with a lot of Cam Newton's points. The only thing that I do not agree with Cam Newton saying, or doing rather, is comparing himself and his skill set to current players. I don't like that. I don't like that. It's one thing if you want to say, oh, yeah, Dak Prescott, Tua is a game manager, Jared Goff is a game manager, and the term game manager is not derogatory for this, that, and the third reason. Cool. I get that. I like that explanation. But when you start saying things like, oh, yeah, like there's not 32 quarterbacks in this league better than Cam Newton. When you're saying hot takes like that and you're not in the league, that's when people start to raise eyebrows at you. Because guess what? Stephen A. Smith isn't saying stuff like that. Kimberly Martin is not saying stuff like that. So when you're past your athletic career, you got to pick a side. You can't flip-flop between, oh, I want to be an athlete and I'm better than all these dudes I'm talking about, and, oh, I'm just a journalist now. I have a podcast. I'm just going to talk about the athletes. Not going to say, you know, you have to pick a side. You have to pick a side. That's all I'm saying. And it seems like Cam Newton is picking the side that's convenient to him at the time. You know, like I would have loved to hear him address his whole take on, oh, there's not 32 quarterbacks better than me. Like, do you know how you sound as a player who got benched for Mac Jones to get on a podcast and say there are not 32 quarterbacks in this league better than Cam Newton? People are going to have a problem with that, Cam. I'm sorry. Because if there weren't 32 other quarterbacks better than you, you'd be in the league. And it's as simple as that. And if you ask him the same question, why aren't you in the league if there's not 32 quarterbacks better than you? Oh, are you being blackballed like Colin Kaepernick? Because I don't think so. Hell, if Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft were in the city of Boston were willing to take you in for a season and have you really take the reins as the quarterback of their franchise, I don't think you're being blackballed. I just don't think that you can play at a high level anymore. And that's okay. That's okay. Cam Newton had a great career. 11 seasons in the NFL. Won an MVP. Won an NFC Championship game. Got to a Super Bowl, obviously. He's been there. He's done that. You know, you don't have to sit up here 11 years later because you're salty you're not in the league anymore saying that, oh, there's not all the quarterbacks in the league aren't better than me. If you want to play football so bad, like that bad, get off the podcast, get in the gym, right? Practice and show these teams that you're serious. But you getting on a podcast and telling me that you wouldn't be the worst quarterback in the league, or there's not 32 quarterbacks better than you, that does nothing for me. That does absolutely nothing for me. I'm sorry. So for that reason, I do think that Cam Newton is a clown because he says things like that and then turns right around and tries to be all high and mighty like, oh, you know, yeah, I'm Cam Newton and this is what I actually meant, right? And again, I'm not discrediting him for what he said today in that 10-minute clip. If you have not watched the clip, please go watch it. Great clip. He spoke a lot of facts, but there was some underlying bullshit. There was some underlying bullshit. What's going on, Beam? What's going on, Leo? Gristle? What's going on? Dre says they need their own platform. Tired of hearing people with no experience whatsoever talking as if they played. Who are you talking about? Are you talking about like the Kimberly Martins of the world and Stephen A. Smiths of the world? Because they never played football. And they already have their own platform. So who are you talking about, Dre? Who are you talking about? Let me see. Lee Dranger has a job. He's none. Let me see what y'all are saying in here. Honestly, don't see how people mad at a guy that not only played the game, but played at a high level at one point, giving his views on the game. Only one that might not be true is Dak. I can get behind that as well. I think Dak may be just a little bit more than a game manager. He's kind of proved that this season, right? But for the most part, what we've seen from Dak Prescott is not game-changing stuff. You know, I can probably count on half of one hand, the amount of like Superman-like plays we've seen Dak Prescott make. Excuse me. In order to be a game changer and not a game manager, you got to make Superman-like plays. You got to make plays like Josh Allen does in the clutch. You got to make plays like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Burrow, those guys, Jalen Hurts. You got to make plays like that, like those guys. Let me see here. In a sense, he's right. It's not a lot of great quarterbacks in the league, to be honest. It's not even a lot of good QBs. So again, like, are teams not calling for Cam Newton because he can't play? Or is it because of his antics? Which I don't think that Cam Newton has had a whole lot of antics. You know what I mean? It's not like he is on some AB type stuff. No, he just talks his shit. And the shit's not problematic outside of the realm of football. So there would be no reason, if he can still ball, to not bring him back. To not sign him to a fucking practice squad. Well, he's not going to anybody's practice squad, right? But to sign him as a backup and tell him, hey, look, you mean you're Cam Newton. If our guy keeps fucking up, we'll throw you in there. Why are no teams doing that? Dre, I want to know. Dre. You're saying that there's not 32 quarterbacks in the league better than Cam Newton. I don't know, man. He got benched for Mac Jones. Like, he was not working out in New England. I mean, do we honestly think that if he goes to, I don't know, a Jets team or a Commanders team, one of these teams that need a quarterback right now, do we think that if he goes to one of those teams that he turns them up? I don't. I really don't, bro. And again, it's okay. I think that Cam Newton is kind of in this stage in his career where he's 1 foot in and 1 foot out, right? Cam Newton is still probably waiting for that call, like, Hey, do you want to come do a workout for this franchise? You know, we're really interested in you. We want to make a playoff push, whatever. No, I mean, he's still 1 foot in with 1 foot out. So that's why he's making comments like this. That's why, and by 1 foot in, 1 foot out, I mean 1 foot still wants to play football, and the other foot wants to be a podcaster, a journalist. He just had Charleston White on his podcast. He's trying to do numbers in the podcasting world. Trust me. He's in and he's out. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I think that the problem with that is that Cam Newton, because he's kind of talking out both sides of his neck now, right? In one breath, he's saying, "Oh, there's not 32 quarterbacks in the league better than me," basically saying, "Somebody please give me a job." Translation: somebody please give me a call to come work out because your quarterback might not be better than Cam Newton, so you need to pick up the phone and see about me. That's what he's saying when he says that. That's the translation, right? So on one hand, he's saying that. And then on the other hand, he's having Charleston White on his podcast, and he's giving hot takes. He's officially joined hot take culture, and he knows what that is, right? And he types the way he does on social media and all that. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Teams don't want to see that. Sorry. You say there's not 32 quarterbacks in the league better than you. I mean, it don't really seem like you're locked into football. Because if you were, listen, a lot of these GMs now, if you have not officially retired and you've already started a podcast and you're on the back half of your career, obviously, and that your last stint with your last team wasn't the greatest, GMs aren't looking for that. GMs are not looking to pick up guys based off of what they once were. They're not. Jerry Jones said it best. You never buy a man based off of what he did. You buy a man based off of what he can do for you going forward in the future. I'm not buying Cam Newton. I'm not signing Cam Newton based off of the MVP he won in 2000 what? Early 2010s? Somebody put in the chat when he won it, the year he won MVP. I'm not signing him just because he went to a Super Bowl, you know? I think there's a reason why the Browns would sign a guy like Joe Flacco over Cam Newton. And I know what some of y'all might be thinking, but that ain't the reason. Okay, that ain't the reason. Like with Cam Newton, it feels like you're getting more than just football. And at this point in his career, he can't afford to be football and antics. You have to be all football. Did you hear what Joe Flacco says after the game last week? Hey, I feel like a kid out there. You know, I'm locked in with you boys, this and that, yada, yada, yada. He's locked in. He's not going and turning around and doing a podcast that night when he gets home. You know, he doesn't have to worry about that. Thank you, Gristle. 2015 is when Cam Newton won the Super Bowl. So, what, 8 years ago? You know, I'm not buying him based off of that. That's something I'm lost on as well, says Dre. I don't care who you put in New England right now. It's not going to work. I don't think he's still a starter, but I definitely think he can be a serviceable backup. And that's the thing. He don't want to be a backup. It's a pride thing, too. It's a pride thing, too. You know, it's like if you say you want to play in the league, you accept whatever job that you can get and you work your ass off until you get to the position that you want. Cam's not willing to do that at this point in his career. And we saw firsthand what Cam Newton did with the Patriots, which was virtually nothing. You know, he scored a touchdown, a rushing touch, I think like a 1 yard, 2 yard rushing, maybe it was like a 5 yard rushing touchdown. He screamed, "I'm back," into the camera. Never really heard from him since. Right. So, I mean, I say all this to say, and I'm not gonna hold y'all long on this one. I really just wanted to get this off my chest. I say all this to say, Cam, if you want to play football, lock in and play some football. Like somebody will call you, right? Be humble as well. So if somebody calls you with a backup position, take it. There's no shame in being on the sideline as a backup quarterback. A backup quarterback is the best job in America, ladies and gentlemen. The best job in America. You tell me I get paid millions to sit on this bench and basically do nothing until it's my turn, until you actually need me. It's a sweet deal. But again, Cam Newton has a lot of pride. So that's what I'm saying. Cam, if you're going to do this podcasting thing, this journalism thing, I need you to completely retire from the NFL. Like, officially retire. Then I will take your sports takes a little bit more seriously. Even when you say things like, oh, there's not 32 quarterbacks in the league better than me. Even when you say things like that, if you were officially retired, I would take what you said right there with a grain of salt and I keep it pushing. And so would everybody else. I promise. I promise we would. We wouldn't hold that against you. We wouldn't, because we know that you're not coming back. So you're not speaking from a place of like, oh, low key, the translation is NFL GMs, hey, call me. You know, if you're not making the playoffs, take a good look at your quarterback. Is he better than Cam Newton? Ask yourself that question. That's what you're saying when you say things like that. So that's all I really have to say about Cam Newton. Is he a clown officially? I wouldn't say that he's a clown, but I do think that he's a little bit confused right now. So not the clown, the C word for clown, not the clown C word, but confused is the C word I'll use for Cam Newton. Confused Cam. I just don't. He doesn't know if he wants to play or not anymore. You know, because if you're gonna be a journalist and you're gonna be a part of hot take culture, you cannot still be in the player pool, right? I just don't. I don't think that works. I don't think that works. It's not gonna land. Your takes are not gonna land the way that you want them to if you are still actively in the player pool. That's why players, when they come on podcasts, like active players, when they come on podcasts, you know, they do these television shows, things like that. They're media trained. They always give you the politically correct answer. They always do. And Cam Newton is kind of straddling the fence between, oh, I still can play, I still want to play, and oh, but I also have my own podcast where I'm getting guests on that don't even talk about sports. I'm doing my own thing there. You got to pick a side, bro. You got to pick a side. Confused Cam. That's all I got for y'all. Thank y'all so much. I love you guys, Rain Gang. You guys have a wonderful, amazing, amazing weekend. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Sutton Def. You guys already know the handle. We will be back on Monday for another episode of the Purple Rain Podcast. I know I didn't talk no Ravens on this show, but that's all right. We'll be back on Monday. Y'all enjoy the game on Sunday night. Go Ravens. Peace out.